Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today, I'm talking about the debut album from Tiësto, In My Memory. Okay, I think it's finally about time for me to talk about Tiësto. Every now and then I feel like I should do a series on an artist I don't generally have positive feelings on, but still have quite a bit to say about. I have done discography reviews for David Guetta and Calvin Harris. At some point I would have to do one for this guy too, just because I've got pent-up thoughts I'd like to let out sometime. And so here we are. He's my next discography review. And before you ask, I'm only going to be doing videos on his 6 core studio albums. I'm not talking about any of his many DJ mixes or going into the random one-off EPs or singles. I know he has more original material in many of those that don't show up on his albums, but I don't really feel like doing the extra work to delve deeper into his catalog than that, when it's pretty unlikely I'm gonna find stuff I want to keep around. Now, I do think it's worth noting that while I would not consider myself much of a fan of Tiësto in general, this series isn't going to be nearly as consistently negative or ambivalent as the David Guetta and Calvin Harris series. The thing about Tiësto is that his career has 2 really well-defined periods. His first 3 albums focus on straightforward trance music with a fairly recognizable sound and style running through all of it. And then his next 3 albums made a massive heel turn into mainstream radio pop, which, we'll get to that. But I mean, this earlier trance era of Tiësto's career was pretty consistently good. Those first 3 albums, none of them are great per se, but I definitely enjoy all of them and can give them my recommendation. His debut album here, In My Memory, is a special case for him in his career because it's the only album of his where he handles the vast majority of the production himself. Yeah, he's another one of those artists that relies on ghost producers. Most notably, his next 3 albums rely heavily on co-production work from DJ Wonky, or however you say that, sorry. Which would bother me a lot more if I were doing this series in like 2016, but at this point I just got used to this being a thing in the mainstream trance scene. I really don't care one way or the other anymore. If the music is good, the music is good, and, you know, Tiësto gives credit where credit is due. It's at least cool to see that he does have some solid production capabilities in his own right, as shown on this first album, and the style he showcases here does still carry into some of his subsequent work, where he has less personal input, while still focusing on fairly standard for the time trance formulas that have all the same percussion patterns and bass lines and propulsive energy you'd expect. He does occasionally add a bit of a hard-hitting industrial edge to that mix. He's not impossible to pick out from a crowd, and was actually pretty good at putting some solid grooves together. May as well just go into the 9 individual tracks on this thing, not going into the bonus remixes or that stuff. I'm trying to keep this series concise. We start with Magik Journey, co-written by this guy who I don't feel like pronouncing. And it's a pretty epic way to start, interspersing its hard-hitting trance grooves with some expansive orchestral and choral arrangements that sound great. The version I'm used to hearing is a little under 10 minutes, but the version on Spotify is a little over 11 minutes. They seem pretty fundamentally similar from what I could tell. The wavering bass line and sharp melodic stabs in the main bulk of the track aren't always an immediate sell for me, but I do really like how the track is structured and how it builds up and pays off effectively, and makes good use of that meaty length. Also, that bridge section about halfway in that uses more of Tiësto's iconic lead synth textures is a particularly compelling moment. Going from there, we got our first vocal track, Close to You, featuring Jan Johnston and co-written by Sam Bettens. Chord progression's a little on the generic side, but I have always enjoyed Johnston's vocal presence. And the smooth breakbeat tinged instrumental is kinda relaxing too, has a particularly deep and satisfying bass line. Then Dallas 4 PM is the first track here of the 3 handled solely by Tiësto with no additional credits. Probably the best of the 3 as well. Well, either that or Lethal Industry, I'm not sure. Yeah, not much to say about this one. Got your typical trance beat going up against airy synth string pads and several different textures of bass lines. Hits hard, gets the job done. Has a nice little flute breakdown at one point. No real complaints to speak of here. And you got the title track, another vocal track, this time featuring Nicola Hitchcock. Also, notably better than the previous vocal track here, despite carrying a very similar vibe with all its light and atmospheric synth pads. Just this time with a more solid trance groove underneath, and better melodies. I'm admittedly not huge on Hitchcock's voice, as she just has this very vibrato-heavy delivery. Like, I remember when she appeared on the Sounds from the Ground track, Moving into a New Space, which put this quality of her voice just front and center and was even a little annoying to me, honestly. She's actually better here over this much more energetic instrumental. The vibrato's less distracting when the instrumental feels like it gives her more support and just has a lot more movement. I just made a comparison between Tiësto and Sounds from the Ground that didn't come out in the latter's favor. That's kind of scary. Check out that Natural Selection album, by the way. It's freaking great. But anyway, going from there, next track is Obsession, featuring co-production from Junkie XL. Don't really have much to say about this one either, but it is a consistent favorite, one of the most hard-hitting tracks on the album, with some super heavy trance beats and awesome stabbing melodic textures, even has some atmospheric moments, super propulsive stuff here. And speaking of consistent favorites, we got Battleship Gray, the best of the three vocal tracks here, mainly thanks to the presence of the incomparable Kirsty Hawkshaw. She's a positive addition to any track as far as I'm concerned, giving easily the most dynamic and memorable performance of the three singers featured here, and the instrumental is actually this really down-tempo trip-hop influence thing to help give the album more variety and call more attention to Hawkshaw's performance. Very moody, very emotional, just great stuff all around. And there's two more Tiësto solo productions in a row, and admittedly neither are particular highlights, but yeah, they're nice too. Flight 643 is as hard-hitting as you'd want, and I hear some of those 909 cymbals in there, nice. Though the stabby textures that come in about 3 minutes in and stick around for the bulk of the running time, they're a little annoying. They don't feel like they mesh very well with the rest of the groove. They make kind of a sour and dissonant, off-pitch interval that makes it feel like you're honking a car horn over the beats. I mean, it's fine, but it's just not a particular favorite personally. Lethal Industry fares better. The beat is even heavier, and that bass line is super driving and intense, while all these various percussion textures bang over on top of it. I think there's some snares in there that sound pulled from the Amen break, and the plucky melodic stabs that show up in the second half, they don't sound perfectly quantized to the grid, as if Tiësto were just playing them on a keyboard himself. Yeah, that one's fun. And of course that brings us to our big epic 10-minute closer, Suburban Train, co-written by Ronald van Gelderen. And yeah, I think we're closing with the best track in the bunch here. Typically strong and hard-hitting grooves, big soaring melodic payoffs, got some kind of synth xylophone textures in there, do-do-do-do, and a nice rising chord progression that really makes this track go the extra mile. I mean, it's very typical of early 2000s trance and doesn't do anything you haven't heard before, but it certainly exemplifies why these styles were popular at the time. Definitely finishes this album out on a satisfying note. Also worth noting that there is a vocal radio edit of this track out there called Urban Train, which also features Kirsty Hawkshaw, and it's pretty neat too, though I prefer the original instrumental as it's so much better fleshed out and feels, you know, a little punchier, I guess. But yeah, that's in my memory. It's a pretty solid album all around. Certainly has its weaker and less interesting moments, and as I kind of alluded to when I talked about Suburban Train, it really was not doing anything game-changing or pushing the genre into new uncharted territory. This is kind of just what trance music sounded like in 2001, but Tiësto did this style pretty damn well. All these tracks hit hard in the way that they're supposed to, he brings just enough variety to keep things interesting. It's all around a promising start to his career, and a good example of why all these styles were big. You just want some good old-fashioned early 2000s trance music, in my memory is a pretty solid collection of it. It's worth giving a shot. I'm overall feeling a 7.5 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Shout out to my Patreon supporters. They're awesome people. You want to add yourself to that list or make me a review, something, link to my Patreon is in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.